Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to this virtual press meet to announce a strategic alliance between Biocon Biologics and Serum Institute Life Sciences. Before we proceed, I would like to inform you that this conference is being recorded. All the media journalists will be on listen-only mode during the meeting and will be able to ask questions to the management during the Q&A session. It is my proud privilege to welcome Mr. Adar Poonawalla, CEO of Serum Institute of India, and Ms. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, Executive Chairperson, Biocon and Biocon Biologics, and some of the other members of the management team from both the companies to this press meet. Ms. Shaw and Mr. Poonawalla will provide us their perspective on this historic coming together of two leading biotech players who have set new benchmarks in the area of biologics and vaccines and have made a significant impact on global health. I would now request Kiran to kindly share her perspective on this alliance. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Seema, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to announce this historic alliance between Serum Institute Life Sciences and Biocon Biologics, which are two leading biotech companies in vaccines and biologics that are focused on impacting global healthcare through affordable access. Both Serum Institute and Biocon have invested in developing global quality products and global scale capabilities in vaccines and biologics. And both organizations believe very strongly in raising India's stature as a nation making a significant difference to global health. This pandemic has made us realize the importance of vaccines and biologics in addressing viral diseases that pose a serious threat to human life. Our shared commitment and vision to impact global health and deliver health equity has brought us together for this long-standing, strategic alliance between the two companies. This alliance will allow us to combine our strengths in vaccines and biologics for making a meaningful impact in fighting infectious diseases. In addition to vaccines, the strategic alliance will also develop antibodies targeting several infectious diseases like dengue, HIV, etc. This alliance, if I may say so, provides asset-light stakes in each other's businesses. Biocon Biologics will have access to 100 million doses of vaccines annually, and SILS will have a 15% stake in Biocon Biologics at a post-money valuation of 4.9 billion. Biocon Biologics will commercialize Serum Institute's vaccine portfolio, including COVID-19 vaccines for global markets. And this would also be an additional growth driver for Biocon Biologics. Additionally, Biocon's research and manufacturing infrastructure will also be leveraged by this partnership for various opportunities in infectious diseases. Biocon Biologics has proven capabilities in biologics with its biosimilars portfolio approved in both the US and Europe and other ICH countries, and is expanding its therapeutic focus from non-communicable diseases to infectious diseases. Our recent collaboration with Adagio demonstrates our ability to play in an important aspect of addressing growing healthcare needs in the viral disease segments. Vaccines obviously will augment our offering in the viral disease segment significantly. And the combined offering that Biocon Biologics can make, I think will basically serve us well. Biocon Biologics has long-standing expertise in developing biologics and expects to establish an R&D division for vaccines to support this strategic alliance for the development of both new platforms for vaccines as well as biologics for communicable diseases. Vaccines, we believe, are a natural adjacency to Biocon Biologics' existing capabilities. They provide a good strategic fit to our business and will provide a new dimension to our efforts in improving global healthcare. At a time when the world sadly acknowledges inequitable access to vaccines, we believe this strategic alliance will combine the strengths and resources of two leading players to build a world-beating partnership in the viral disease segment and enhance access to life-saving vaccines and biotherapeutics, both in emerging and developed markets. I am extremely happy to welcome Aadar to the board of Biocon Biologics. His expertise and long-standing experience in global healthcare will be invaluable for the company. And I also would like to say that whilst we pursue global opportunities together, this will of course be when India has vaccine adequacy. So with that, I will hand over this to Aadar to share his views on the importance of this strategic alliance.
Thank you, Kiran. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you, Kiran, for this warm welcome. And I think, Kiran has articulated everything quite well. What I would just add is that people may be wondering, why now? What is the rationale for this at this moment? We've known each other for 2 decades, I think, and never has there been a time where the opportunities have been so great globally to leverage our skill sets, as Kiran has mentioned, in our manufacturing and research. We both have our own strengths, and we look forward from our group to leverage the research capabilities and the manufacturing capabilities of the biologic space, and vice versa for BBL and for Kiran to do that. When we say that this partnership is, 100 million doses of vaccines, etc., this is the minimum. The opportunities are limitless, and as mentioned, we will look at expanding on monoclonals and the other therapeutics and vice versa. There may be vaccines that BBL does additional fill finish for Serum Institute. There may be other monoclonals like in dengue and other areas that we take BBL's help in and do a profit share. So there will be additional business partnerships and alliances in addition to the 100 million doses of vaccines that we've talked about. In 2020, I had to make a very conscious and difficult decision where I had to put off our plans temporarily for our monoclonals play and the capacities that we had built. And I diverted all of that and sacrificed all of that for Covishield. As you know, today we're producing and delivering more than 160 million doses of Covishield to the country. So for us to do that and make that sacrifice in our capabilities and capacities, we are hoping to get that back through this partnership as well, so that we can maintain our ambitions in the biologics space as well. So with that, I think everything has been explained. And again, goes without saying, the whole objective is to bring affordable vaccines and biologics to the developing world countries where they don't have access to affordable healthcare. And of course, that it's not limiting to, we will be, of course, taking advantage and leveraging our capabilities for the developed world markets where we can, get better pricing and better value. But we want to also focus on the developing world countries, which have been always neglected. So with that, I will hand over to the moderator and thank you all, and happy to answer some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiran, and thank you, Mr. Poonawalla, for sharing. With that, we will now move to the Q&A session. All participants will remain in the listen-only mode. Kindly raise your hand and use the raise hand option under the reactions tab on your Zoom application. The producer will announce your name and unmute you on your turn. Please announce your publication name before asking the question. And if you have a second question, please rejoin the queue. With that, Abhishek, can we take the first question, please?
The first question is from Divya Rajagopal. Hi Adar, hi Kiran. Congratulations on the tie-up. I just wanted to ask you is that we've seen that for COVID, several of the MABs are off patent right now. Companies such as Roche have said that they will not be enforcing their patent for drugs such as tocilizumab. Eli Lilly has said the same thing for their drugs. Would you be looking at sort of going immediately to manufacture those MABs that are under use for COVID-19?
Well, Divya, I've already mentioned to you that we have a very interesting, obviously, tie-up with Adagio for a monoclonal antibody that treats COVID-19. In addition to that, we also have our own drug, Alzumab, which is a very strong contender to tocilizumab. And of course, as you know, tocilizumab is also being developed indigenously as a biosimilar. So, we will look at these opportunities, but suffice to say that the bigger opportunity obviously lies in vaccines and novel antibodies that can treat COVID-19. So we will go after, value accretive opportunities.
Right. Just to kind of follow up on the vaccines part of it, Adar, there is still the export ban that's going on in India. Now, considering that you, of course, have a 15-year horizon, but when do you actually hope that you'll start exporting your vaccines to other parts of the world?
I knew somebody would ask that question. So what I will say at this stage is that, of course, this is a long-term partnership. The export, I wouldn't call it ban, but restrictions were there temporarily, and rightly so, to take care of our nation's needs first. Will, I think, slowly ease in the next month or two. I don't want to venture a guess, but it will happen very soon, only for the fact and the reason that if you look at how many vaccines we have delivered and others in India have delivered, we are coming very close to a point where there is more than enough vaccine stock, especially with us now scaling up even further for this year, that in the next 2 months, we do expect slow easement of exports. But again, you have to check that with the government of India. It's their decision. And we will go by what they feel is appropriate, because they have to balance the needs and stockpiling of the vaccines for India in case of third waves and fourth waves. So, taking the lessons from what we learned in the second wave, which hit India badly, we don't want to be in that situation again. And that is where the Indian government, rightly so, is being very cautious and calculated in, managing the vaccine stocks. So that's all I'll say on that.
Thank you.
The next question is from CNBC Sonal.
Hi, Mr. Poonawalla, Ms. Shaw. This is Sonal Bhutra from CNBC TV 18. Well, I have a similar question for the both of you, but let me start with the lady, Ms. Shaw. You did speak about the revenue potential or the financial impact of this particular deal. You said it is a steady stream of revenues and margins that you'll see from the second half of FY23. Give us a sense, because your investors would like to know, what is the figure that you're looking at? What is it for Biocon Biologics through this deal that you're aiming at?
Well, you should be able to dimension this opportunity, because you're talking about 100 million doses. And you know that the price of vaccines can range between $3 to $10, depending on where you're going to supply these vaccines. So I think you have to look at it in that way to see what that opportunity can be. And because there's a profit share, obviously there's a value accretion both in revenues and profit. So I think that's what the add-on is to Biocon Biologics business. And as Adar very rightly said, it goes beyond this. So I think there are many, many other opportunities we're looking at, which can further add to this 100 million doses that is being mentioned in the press release.
Yes.
So I would basically say that, and it's a long-term partnership. So I believe that there are many, many other opportunities that we will look at, and we are already exploring. And I think this partnership is going to have a great opportunity to be very, very sizable.
Absolutely. Actually, that was going to be my follow-on question to Mr. Poonawalla. You did speak in your opening remarks as well that you are looking at exploring more options. Is it only with Biocon? Are you looking at more such agreements with other companies, and specifically with Biocon as well? What are the other therapies, other products, other areas that you're looking at?
No, so as I said earlier, whether it's certain monoclonals that we out-license to them and do a profit share, whether it is vaccines that we now have realized that we also, if we want to keep expanding our capacity, we will need partners. And of course, the alliance is giving that opportunity and framework so that whenever I need excess products or vaccines rather to be filled and finished, or even commercialized and sold in certain markets where they have a better strength in the developed world eventually when we go with these vaccines. So this is where the framework allows us to go to Biocon Biologics to be able to do that.
So you are looking at further partnerships with other players as well, other companies as well?
Well, no, nothing really, because I mean, once we have this, which we have in place, I don't see the need for us to go outside of that, unless it's, again, compulsory based on the licensing rules that we may have with partners. But again, the profit share and commercialization will still be through Biocon Biologics. So ultimately, it's all going to flow through the partnership.
Okay, that is good to know. Ms. Shaw, you did speak about a possibility of further expanding your infrastructure. You did speak about a research and development arm as well. Will you be expanding your capacities further? Give us a rough timeline. What are the plans there?
Well, these are things that obviously we will discuss as partners, and obviously you'll get to know in time. But certainly these are on the anvil. I mean, we are going to explore opportunities together, and wherever it makes sense, obviously we are going to expand capacity. We will invest in R&D, and obviously as partners, we will work very closely to address many of these opportunities, because let's face it, the opportunities are huge both in infectious diseases as well as non-communicable diseases. And as others said, there are huge opportunities for us to look at.
I'll just add to that. Take, for example, the messenger RNA technology. We're building a facility to handle, a few 100 million doses, if not 1 billion doses of messenger RNA. But that'll take about 2 years to build. We're in the construction phase. So the idea of the framework of this long-term partnership allows, say, Biocon Biologics to do the research, get the product through clinics, for example, and we can manufacture it, sharing the profits, which is beyond the 100 million doses of vaccines today or whatever that we've signed up on. So these are all the add-ons which will happen over the next few years based on what technologies prove themselves. At the moment, we've seen with messenger RNA technologies, there are certain limitations on long-term efficacy. Once that gets established, the cold chain has to be improved so that the messenger RNA technology is for example, we were discussing that if we do embark on a messenger RNA candidate, it should be stable at +2 to 8 degrees, not -70, to make things more practical. So these are the sort of things for the future.
That is good to know, Mr. Poonawalla and Ms. Shaw. Thank you so much for answering all these questions. But one more question, Mr. Poonawalla, since we have you with us, give us a sense of ramp up of Covishield manufacturing and Novavax as well.
So I knew we'll refrain, I think, today to discuss this partnership, but there's nothing to hide there. All the production is going on well. We're at 160 million a month of Covishield, and we're ramping up to 200 million a month. But again, this fluctuates and will fluctuate based on the raw materials that we get from the global raw material supply chain. In fact, this is another thing that we have discussed in our partnership, which I think we both forgot to mention, that we will both together, Kiran and I were discussing that the raw material chain, glass vials, which we've made a recent investment in, chemicals, resins, media, all these raw material manufacturers who are finding it hard to scale up and match vaccine manufacturing supply. We want to make investments in those areas also so that we're completely backward integrated in all this, as well as we're talking about these ginormous volumes, which is going to go into billions of doses. Covishield alone is going to be more than 1 billion doses. Novavax will be there, and so on, and so many other vaccines. So the raw material supply will also have to be critical. I don't know if Kiran wants to add anything to that, but we're looking to invest and strengthen our position in that as well, so that we are fully self-reliant, and most probably we'll be doing it in India, so that India is self-reliant.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We forgot to mention that, but I think we don't want supply chain disruptions like we've seen this time. So I think to sort of start making sure that we build the entire, supply chain right here in India, or at least make sure that we don't have reliance on external, sort of vendors. And that we can actually support this vertically integrated endeavor, I think is something both of us feel very strongly about.
Okay, Mr. Poonawala and Ms. Shaw, thank you so much for answering these questions. That's it for me.
The next question is from Tamanna Itina.
You're mute.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, Kiran. Hi, Aadhar. Thank you so much for speaking with us, and congratulations on this partnership. Kiran, let me begin by asking you about something you mentioned in your opening comments when you talked about the partnership in the context of vaccine inequity that we're seeing around the world, and especially with COVID-19 vaccines. How do you think this partnership would help solve an issue like that?
Well, I think, Aadhar has anyway talked about building a large capacity and also leveraging our capacities. And we will look at all the requirements globally in terms of how we can scale up in whichever way possible to address this whole, large demand that there is for COVID vaccines. So I think that's what I meant by the fact that there is a huge amount of vaccine inequity. There's a huge unmet demand in the world. And I think together we will explore what is possible. But of course, needless to say that Serum has actually created the world's largest capacity. So from that point of view, they are addressing it in a very, very large way. But if there's anything we can do to bolster it further, we will be able to support that as well.
Can you share any more details when you say 100 million doses annually over the next 15 years? Is this going to be focused, at least initially for the first few years, on COVID-19 vaccines, or what are the other kinds of infectious diseases and vaccinations that you're going to be looking at?
You want me to take that?
I think so.
Yeah. So yes, I mean, initially it would make sense that whatever, firepower and additional capacity we can leverage from Biocon Biologics, including this first 100 million doses annually, will be focused on COVID vaccines. But we've got a huge pipeline which can see the partnership through in the long term. Let's say, for example, the COVID-19 vaccines only end up as an annual booster. So the requirement and demand may reduce globally, but we've got, so many new vaccines, malaria, HPV, pneumococcal vaccines, and so many others that need to go out there to the world. So initially, to answer your point, it will be the COVID vaccines because that's the need of the hour. And then we'll see what makes the most global impact, what has the most value, and then jointly decide on what those vaccines should be.
Aadhar, are you preparing for booster shots in India? Your father recently talked about the requirement of booster shots in his view. Are you stockpiling for booster shots?
No. I think, the jury is still out on that. I think what he meant in his brief comments was that maybe some very vulnerable sections, immunocompromised people or some others could do with some booster shots. There's no evidence to say so far that Covishield requires a third dose. Some people who feel they want to take it, I think, may have taken it. We have not recommended it officially yet. I think the government and the Drug Controller's Office will have to take that call based on the data, and maybe ICMR, who will analyze the data and the cases and everything as time goes on, including how effective the vaccine is on Delta variant. I know some vaccines in the West have been recommending a third dose because the antibody response has dropped a little. But we'll wait and see. I think right now the goal is give 2 doses to everybody and then look at 3 doses as a booster, because it's unethical to start giving 3 doses to somebody when others in certain countries and populations have not even got 2 doses.
Yeah.
For example, only 2 to 3% of the developing world countries have received vaccines, whereas you've gone up to 40, 50% in the developed world. We're very fortunate in India, being in the developing world, to have so many Indian vaccine manufacturers that have been able to give these large vaccines. But, if we didn't have that in India, we'd be in the same position as these African or other countries who've not been able to get the vaccines, purely because the rich nations have taken away most of the vaccines, and now talking about what you're saying, giving a third dose, which is really, I think, not right. At least till a significant part of the other countries get 2 doses. And then we can, of course, look at the third dose or an annual booster shot or something like that, which I think eventually will happen. But from the ethical standpoint, we must focus our strategies in this manner.
Allow me to ask you just one more question on this, Aadhar. When you're talking about vaccinating everyone, the goal is to the end of the year, we'll vaccinate all Indian adults with 2 doses. That was the stated goal. Do you think it's achievable?
See, I don't want to guess, because everyone who's been guessing in this pandemic has regretted making statements. So, look, all I will say is that we're going to be supplying, close to 200 million doses a month from October. As you have already seen the reports, you've got Bharat Biotech giving and scaling up very well as well, hopefully, and other companies like Zydus also contributing. So I think I'll leave it to you all to make the calculations. I don't want to make any guesses or predictions. And then hopefully, yes, we cover a large part of the Indian population. So we feel secure, especially with our healthcare workers, vulnerable people, to have enough coverage for second doses, so that in case another wave comes, we're far better prepared. And you've seen Modi ji's actions, which we have to applaud, on having, organized oxygen and other healthcare infrastructure. We're definitely far better prepared now than any other country to handle any other waves. Maybe Kiran can add also on all the steps we've taken and lessons we've learned also in the last few months. And what we've achieved as a country is phenomenal given our population size.
I absolutely agree with you, Aadhar. I think we've done a phenomenal job. And I also believe that we are heading towards vaccine adequacy. Now, I think the government also has done a tremendous job of upping the vaccination rates. And I think the vaccine industry is keeping pace with that. So I feel that by the end of the year, we will be in a very good place. I think there's a lot of hope and expectation that even if we get another wave, it will be muted because of the fact that so many people have at least received 1 shot. In fact, for a country of our size, it's tremendous that, we've got more than 750 million of people with 1 dose. And now we are steadily inching forward in terms of people being fully vaccinated. So I think, the Prime Minister will have a lot to be proud of when he is speaking at the UNGA, in next week, because I think India really has done a commendable job.
Kiran, if I can just ask you one question on this specific partnership before I hand back. As Aadhar mentioned, the focus initially will be on COVID-19 vaccines, since that is the need of the hour. And right now we know that there are some export restrictions on COVID-19 vaccine. So how does that really pan out to operationalize this partnership in the near term?
Well, Tamanna, I think we've already, stated in our press release that really the commercial opportunities as contained in the agreement only starts later next year, in the second half of next fiscal, by which time we expect vaccine adequacy to be very strong. But even ahead of that, there are many other opportunities we are looking at. So I think it's not just restricted to the 100 million doses, as Aadar just said. And I think we can't spell out everything, but there are very large opportunities that we are pursuing together.
Right. Thank you.
The next question is from Anju from Script.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity. Just a couple of questions. Kiran ma'am, could you elaborate a bit, just taking a step back on Biocon Biologics' broader strategic thinking on the vaccines foray, because it comes with a distinct regulatory profile, growth prospects, and profitability. And then, as Mr. Poonawala mentioned, there's this huge potential of mRNA technology also in the area of cancer, where Biocon is already rather big. And also some of the key milestones that investors could look out for in the short term. That's my first question. The second one is, would Serum typically have the option to dilute or up its stake in Biocon Bio should the IPO happen over the next 2-3 years, or is there a kind of lock-in that we are looking at?
No, I would answer your second question by saying, certainly we don't want to comment on all those aspects of your question. I think suffice to say that Serum Institute is invested in Biocon Biologics because of the joint opportunities that we see. As far as Biocon is concerned, we believe this is a natural adjacency because of the kind of capabilities that are very common between biologics and vaccines. And we believe that since we have been focusing on biologics and non-communicable diseases, I think SILS is an excellent partner because they understand infectious diseases and the whole vaccine market opportunity globally much better than us. And therefore, this partnership augurs very well for us. And we will, of course, leverage our Access group, which is involved in commercializing many of our biosimilars in global markets and in the developing world. And as far as mRNA technology is concerned, of course, I think we will look at this as a very important opportunity for the partnership. We will look at investing in researching this particular platform. And as Aadar said earlier on, we will look at differentiation in terms of mRNA vaccines, both in terms of the cold chain that it presently demands, and obviously we would like to improve on that. And of course, in terms of how do you, I'm sure there will be new knowledge that's coming out of mRNA technologies in terms of durability of response. And those are some of the scientific questions we would like to answer as we develop mRNA vaccines.
Just one quick question for Mr. Poonawala. mRNA also gives you the opportunity to combine multiple vaccines into a single dose. That's the current thinking. Is that an area that you're already looking at or you would explore?
Still very early days, I would say. Let us see what proves itself. And as Kiran said, we need a thermostable product. Of course, the excitement in the world with messenger RNA technology is that it's not just for COVID, it can be easily adapted if proven, across so many other diseases, including HIV. There are some working on that. So let's wait and see. I think it's very early, but we're just saying that these are the future things that can come about in 2 years, which is, not a long period of time in our field, because the speed at which things get developed and now will be developed also will be much faster. We used to take 6-7 years to develop a vaccine. We launched our pneumococcal vaccine for pneumonia in children, to prevent pneumonia in children, in 2019. We worked on it for 6 to 7 years between trials and development. But now you can see how fast even the regulatory framework for vaccines is going to be there, where we've also made a lot of recommendations to our country to make changes, which they've very readily and well accepted now. So, the development also of new vaccines and biologics is going to happen much faster, bringing opportunities to the market much faster to commercialize.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
The next question is from Anuradha from Indian Express.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, most of the questions have been already answered, so I'll restrict myself to one question. Mr. Poonawalla, there was this 3 months of, after working together, the Russian Direct Investment Fund and Serum Institute had made it official to produce some 300 million doses of the Sputnik V vaccine annually. So, what's the uptake on that? And just if you could please tell us, about the pediatric COVID vaccine, because I think a lot of parents are looking forward to that. Thank you.
So I'll answer your second question first. The pediatric space, where we have also with Novavax, our Covovax candidate, have applied and started the trials, as you know. I think 3 to 4 months is the minimum period we would need to ascertain how safe and effective and well accepted it is for children. Don't forget, we're going to go even below the age of 12 in a phased manner, so that we can cover almost down to the age of 3 or 4, because all parents would want their children eventually to be protected. Having said that, we all know this disease has not been attacking children with the same ferocity as it has with adults. So that is the silver lining. You've got the other companies, Bharat and Zydus, who will be launching, I think, in the pediatric, or not pediatric, but under 18s segment. We, I think, would be confident to say in January or February, we could have our Covovax being recommended. And again, you'll have to check with the Drug Controller's Office when they feel it's appropriate and safe to go into children. But that would be my rough forecast. Regarding RDIF, we have agreed to do the Sputnik Light vaccine, which is, stable at a good temperature. And I think when that is licensed in India, we can start commercial manufacturing at that time. At the moment, we're in a stage where we are exchanging with Gamaleya Institute the quality batches that we are sending for their approval to check that it complies to the standard quality of all their partners that they've engaged with. So we will just complement and help them make some more Sputnik vaccine to what it is currently being done with their existing partners in India. So that also, I think, till December, January, we're not going to see Sputnik coming out of India. Out of SILS. You've got other partners like Dr. Reddy's and others who are trying to scale it up in the meanwhile. Does that cover it?
Yeah, let's move to the next question, Abhishek.
The next question is from Sohini, Business Standard.
Hi, good afternoon, Kiran and Adar. I had a question that Biocon will be receiving 100 million doses annually of the finished doses of vaccines from Serum's portfolio. But is there any plan or outlook to manufacture Serum's vaccines at Biocon facilities, whether COVID or non-COVID? And will Serum also look at making any of the MABs that Biocon either is proprietary or has licensing rights for? Is there a manufacturing collaboration which is likely wise, in these areas?
So let me answer that by saying that the question you asked has been sort of commented upon by both Adar and me. I think, obviously our partnership goes beyond the 100 million doses. We've already said that we will, obviously leverage each other's manufacturing infrastructure. And therefore, it goes without saying that Biocon's manufacturing infrastructure will be looked at for these kind of additional opportunities. So I hope that answers your question.
And does Serum also manufacture MABs? Do you get into manufacturing?
Well, as Adar just mentioned, right now their entire facility has been committed to COVID vaccines.
Yes.
So obviously right now they don't have the kind of capacity, but we are providing that capacity for their biologic needs as well. So I think there are lots of opportunities between the two partners.
No, and I'll just add to that, see, if we're experts in making vaccines and they're experts in making MABs, we may even for some of our own MABs, as I've said, and we're already discussing that for dengue and some others, where we may not need to, in 2 or 3 years' time, resume manufacturing of MABs. We can just out-license to them or do a profit share arrangement. That was the whole point of the framework agreement, to be able to leverage that. And so they can make MABs for us, vaccines for us also, and we'll continue to make, of course, the minimum, which is stipulated in the agreement of the vaccines that we have talked about. So I hope that answers your...
Yeah. I have one more question, is that you mentioned that you would be looking at backward integration for raw material supplies. So are there more acquisitions lined up? Like you just had a vial deal. So are we looking at more such acquisitions, whether from SILS or BBL?
So what I think the responsible strategy in that would be, and to comment at this very early stage, would be that we are going to now maybe discuss and explore common items and interest of raw materials, which are common both in the bio, and they are common, in the face of it when we were having preliminary discussions. And the teams will now discuss together and maybe shortlist 4 or 5 major areas, resins, media, I don't know, some other things. These bioreactor bags. Reusables, which were short at the time of the US, when we had tried to get more raw materials from them and Europe. So these will be certain common items where we'll do a focused strategy, and maybe whether it's an acquisition, maybe we can both assign and give long-term contracts to these suppliers where they prioritize supply to us. So there'll be different strategies we'll have to explore. Still very early. We're not actively found anything as yet, but I think in the next 6 months to a year, we'll find that, and that is something which will cement the long-term, production capabilities for both the companies.
And if I can add just one more question to Adar. For Novavax, the raw material supplies were an issue a few months back, and you had said that you are looking at, alternative vendors for that. So how is the situation? Are you now ready to make 50 million doses a month of the Novavax?
Well, it's improved, but, again, raw material suppliers, new suppliers that we're developing, it takes time. So at least the silver lining is that we've got people who can make the quality raw materials that we need, but they also are inundated with orders from different vaccine companies, from, Korea, China, Europe, US, everywhere. So we're trying our best, and we'll see how to scale up. Again, we're now not limited by our capabilities. We're only pegged and limited by the raw materials that they can give us. Of course, there's a major improvement since March, but we'll wait and see. We'll know in December for sure how much our monthly production will be, and we can announce that at that time.
Okay, so now you're stockpiling at the moment, the Novavax vaccine, right?
Yeah, but it's not the kind of stockpiling in the large volumes that we wanted to do because of certain raw materials which we just can't get. They are very specialized raw materials, including adjuvants that we need from Novavax, which has now slowly started to flow. So that's all taking shape. But again, till we get licensed, it's all meaningless. We're just stockpiling, and we don't want to, again, stockpile too much, because these products have a shelf life, and we have to take that into account also.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll move to the next question, Abhishek.
The next question is from Mr. Ajay Tyagi from PTI.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Ajay, go ahead.
Hi. Congratulations, Kiran and Adar, for the partnership. Adar, there is a small question I have for you. I just wanted to understand that for Covovax for children, you plan to launch it in Jan or Feb, or you think that it would be the regulator will okay it in Jan or Feb?
See, I can't comment on it. Won't be appropriate. we will have to wait to see how the trial progresses, how the children accept it. And then the drug controller will have to take his decision. But if you look at today, the way it's going, the trial is going on smoothly. We've injected a lot of patients with the product. I think let us review and discuss this end of the year, and then I can give you a more accurate answer. Right now, again, making these forecasts, is meaningless and misleading. So better to just wait for a few months and then we can give a better answer.
Thank you, Adar. Thanks.
The next question is from Shivani Singh from Reuters.
Hey, hi Kiran, hi Adar. I would like to congratulate both of you, and I would want to know what the exact deal terms are. So the release that y'all put out said it's a 15% stake, and it values the entire company at about $4.9 billion. So that would lump sum give us like a $700 million figure. Could you confirm that amount for me? That would be great.
Yeah, I think that is the broad outline of the deal. I think that's what we have shared in the public domain, and that's how you should interpret it in terms of the value.
All right. And another question that I'd like to ask Adar is that, so this partnership, can this be looked at from the viewpoint of SII trying to sort of unburden themselves and keep up with this unmet demand that we have for COVID-19 vaccines right now?
That's very easy to answer. See, it is a long-term partnership, as we said, leveraging the research capabilities, which opens up more opportunities, making other products, including MABs, using their expertise, also using their expertise on, selling in certain markets where they are much stronger than us in the developed world. And of course, in the short term, we've clearly said that if they can fill finish or make some more vaccines, in our partnership to increase the overall output. Why not? Of course, we're looking at that very aggressively in the short term because the need of the hour is there and the opportunity is there, the demand is there. So it will, how much it will unburden our capacities, we'll see. And, as soon as something happens there, I'm sure Kiran will announce that look, this is an additional thing that they're going to fill, these many doses will come out in such and such time. So we'll wait and see.
I just want to add to that. I don't think this is about unburdening. I think this is about, looking at synergistic opportunities, which both of us have been discussing for some time. And we felt that this was the right time now to bring these two companies together in this kind of a unique alliance. So I don't think it was really about unburdening anything. It was really about looking at new opportunities together.
The next question is from Mr. Vishwanath from Money Control.
Thanks for giving me this opportunity. This is for both Ms. Shaw and Adar as well. So you said that this partnership is beyond 100 million doses like that you're talking about. So, I mean, like some of the things that you have shared, a lot of exciting things, and those requires a lot of investments as well. So, I mean, like what kind of investments that will go into this? Like who will be investing it? And is this more than this 15% partnership, 15% stake that SII will be making?
So I'll take a stab at it first and then Adar can add. I think first, the short-term opportunity is to cross-leverage our existing infrastructure and capabilities. So there, I don't think it's about, huge investments. But obviously, as we get into new opportunities, we will be looking at co-investing in these new opportunities. And it's too early to really tell you what the quantum of investment is going to be at this stage.
See, yeah, and I'll just add, we are both, based on these new opportunities that are coming about globally, we are both investing in additional capacity continuously. In fact, I was over at Kiran's campus and we saw so much construction for the future plans that they have, and we've got new buildings being constructed continuously. So we are we are investing, adding to our capacities for different technologies and products. And as we see opportunities coming, we will expedite on those investments to cross leverage the advantages we will have. I may have a certain limitation that I cannot expand and fill certain vaccines beyond a certain point, whereas Kiran will be expanding on making more filling lines to cater to future demand in both the biologics and vaccine space. And we can utilize that infrastructure. So it's, using each other's infrastructure to the optimal level where it's all complementary. And that's what the framework allows us to.
And I think I want to, emphasize one more thing. This is a very unique partnership because it brings two Indian companies together. Generally speaking, you start seeing these big announcements coming between, an overseas company and India doing an Indian company doing something together. But this is so important because it's two, big companies in their own respective fields, one in vaccines and one in biologics coming together. I think that's what makes it such an interesting and important alliance.
Just add, one more to add, like this is to other, like you have mentioned about this biologics program within SIA, and you mentioned one biologic, dengue biologic. Like, what are the other things, sir? If you can share, like, what, in your biologic space, like what things that are happening, right now?
We have other monoclonals, for HIV and other things. A lot of things we had to put on the back burner because of the pandemic that hit us, and then I had to focus only on scaling up vaccines. So I won't go into the details of the monoclonals that we have got tie-ups with, because that may have other repercussions to the partners that we have signed up on. But those monoclonals are something that we can expedite and co-develop and bring to the market with this partnership. That way we don't have to compromise. Today, I had to make a decision, or rather in 2020, that do I make vaccines or monoclonals? The obvious answer was I have to step up the vaccine production to deal with the pandemic. So even in the next 2-3 years, I myself cannot go back to those monoclonals, and that's where the advantage comes in, where Biocon Biologics can step on the gas on those partnerships, where we can do a profit share and collaborate and get those products to the market.
The next question is from Jyoti Datta from HBL.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
So good afternoon to both of you. You've both spoken about both manufacturing and research. Now, in the mRNA context, just wanted to understand, you have companies that make mRNA vaccines, saying that, technology transfer takes a lot of time. There are a lot of consumables and all of that, and it's difficult for, other companies to pick up and run with that. Just wanted from both of you to understand what you think on this whole tech transfer discussion that's happening in the vaccines and biologic space.
So first and foremost, I think Aadhar did mention that, we are looking at a 2-year time horizon in which to develop such new vaccines. And I believe that if we do enter into a partnership with an existing mRNA vaccine company, obviously we know what we need to do, and we will make the necessary investments to basically leverage it. So I think it's too early for us to comment on your question.
Are there anything that you may want to add?
I think Kiran's right. We're just waiting to see which technology is the right one, who we partner with, or we develop it ourselves with a certain platform. I think when we make some headway in that, then we can comment. At the moment, it's still a bit early. All what we're saying is that the construction and provision to make messenger RNA vaccines is being done at Serum, at SILS. And so that will be a infrastructure available for both companies to use if and when the right candidate or candidates emerges. So, the infrastructure always has to match your research. There's no use having research and you're not having the infrastructure, and vice versa. So that's what will occur in 2 years.
Right. And the COVID vaccines that, BBIL will have access to, we're talking of the Covishield only over here.
No. It is Covishield. It could be Novavax. It could be whatever we jointly agree
right
at that moment in time, which makes the most strategic sense. And whether it's value or global impact or whatever it is. So we have an internal system in which to decide that, but it's, across so many vaccines. It's not limited to just one vaccine.
Correct.
So let me just make that very clear.
I think we can take one more question, right, Seema?
Just two more, ma'am. One from Deccan and then Z's News and then we close.
Okay.
The next question is from Mr. Ashoka from IANS.
Hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Go ahead, please.
Ma'am, we are really proud of you, and I must really congratulate Mr. Radha for having that ethical point of view as far as third dose is concerned. We really appreciate your concern, sir. And the question is, ma'am, you talked about self-reliance as far as raw materials and production of the vaccines are concerned in India. And it is you also talked about uninterrupted supply of raw materials to manufacture vaccines in India, and how realistic or pragmatic it is the viewpoint, and can you elaborate on it, ma'am?
No, I just think it's an endeavor, and I think we will work towards it, and I think we've shared with you what we want to do. Now, as things happen, we will share it with you. But right now, to give you any more perspective on that is very difficult.
Thank you.
Let's move to Devanshi.
The next question is from Devanshi from Z Business.
Devanshi, are you there? Please unmute Devanshi. I can still see she's muted. We have only 3 more minutes. Otherwise, we will move on.
There's no response from Devanshi.
Okay. So, Sujata, over to you quickly. We just have 3 more minutes and then we'll have to let both Kiran and Mr. Poonawala leave.
Okay. Hi. Thank you. And congratulations to both of you. My question is to Dr. Kiran. India is moving from being a chemical-based pharma hub to a biologics-based pharma. So here R&D plays a major role, and it also requires a strong financing ecosystem for research. So how good are we when it comes to this segment?
Well, I have been advocating for research-linked incentives, and I think that's going to be extremely important for India, because I think innovation is key. I think research is going to be key for nonlinear growth. And if we really want to, start seeking, global leadership through a very value accretive model, then you have to focus on research. And for that, I do hope that the government will introduce research-linked incentives. And I also would like the PLI scheme to focus on biopharma as a very important sector to call out, rather than just look at it as clubbing it as a large pharma requirement. So I think you can see that countries like Korea are hugely investing in biopharma and vaccine manufacturing. And I think India also needs to get that kind of incentive-linked scheme for biopharmaceutical manufacturing. So those are my 2 comments.
Okay. Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Zydus Cadila is working on a DNA vaccine, which is the world's first DNA COVID vaccine. Is BBL working on any options as such?
I don't know what your comments mean, but I think there are, for instance, what Serum Institute is developing as Novavax is also a DNA subunit vaccine. So I think there are many, many vaccines. And I think what we are talking about is, obviously, we will explore many, many platforms, but I think the most advanced in this is mRNA.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sujata. So I would now like to thank Mr. Poonawala and Kiran for your time to take all these questions from the press with so much patience. On behalf of all the participants, I would like to congratulate you on this game-changing collaboration, which is going to make a powerful impact with the combined strength of biologics and vaccines. It will go a long way in transforming healthcare and making a difference to billions of lives. So members of the media, on behalf of Biocon Biologics and Serum Institute, I would now like to thank all of you for joining in today. If you have any further questions, please write to me, Seema Ahuja, or my team members at Biocon Group Global Communications. You can refer to the press release, which is posted on biocon.com. We look forward to reading your stories that you file on this alliance and wishing you all good health and happiness. Please follow COVID safety protocols and stay safe, stay healthy until we connect again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.